This is a lecture about the Age of Enlightenment, also known as the Age of Reason, which lasted between 1687 and 1790. In Britain around 1700, a number of important changes had taken place in the century between 16 and 1700. By 1700 it was the parliament, not the monarch, which was the supreme authority, and before, the economy of the country had more or less been the private business of the monarch, but not now. Now it was the parliament who were deciding about the money. This was an age of criticism, and there was a conflict between values, meaning individualism and reason were becoming important philosophical concepts, as opposed to tradition and orthodox religious beliefs. And this opened a way for independent thought, and intellectuals popped up all over Europe, and of course also in Britain. And at this time, trade was flourishing in the country, and the first colonies were formed, and also the East India Company was the greatest commercial enterprise of the country. And as you see, the political parties in England arose, and it's the same parties that we have today, the Tories and the Whigs. England was a very strong colonial power, and it had colonies all over the world. It was believed that reason and common sense would lead the way to a better world for everybody, and respect, tolerance, and democracy were new words. A few people had basic literary skills, but they were, just as all people of all times and cultures, interested in a good story. And stories about seafaring, desert islands, strange adventures, and the exotic were popular. And literature became the medium for discussing and analyzing political problems, as well as enlightening the people, and that's why this period is called the Enlightenment. More and more people could read and showed interest in reading about their own living conditions. They wanted entertainment and knowledge in witty and straightforward journalistic prose, and realism was the defining characteristic which differentiates the work of the early 18th century novelists from previous fiction. It was realistic, the writings, but that doesn't mean that it was necessarily true. And now a few famous authors from this period. This is Samuel Johnson. He was an essayist, poet, critic, and a talker, and he wrote many essays. He is also known for the writer of the first dictionary, a dictionary of the English language. And many famous aphorisms are taken from his works. This, for example, is an aphorism on pleasure. Pleasure is only received when we believe that we give it in return. This is an aphorism on boredom. Time, with all its celerity, moves slowly to him whose whole employment is to watch its flight. Now, take a few moments to think about the following. What is an aphorism really? And what do the aphorism really mean? And it is generally said that many of Dr. Johnson's aphorisms are both timeless and humorous. Do you agree or not, and why? Just think about this. And this is the explanation of an aphorism. An aphorism is a concise and often witty statement of wisdom or opinion. And this is another of the famous authors from this period, Jonathan Swift. He is, of course, most famous for Gulliver's Travels, which is a satirical masterpiece that appeared in 1726. Gulliver's Travels is written in 4 parts, and it describes the travels of Gulliver, who travels to Lilliput, which is a land inhabited by tiny people whose small size renders all their pompous activities absurd. And they go to a country which is populated by giants who are amused when Gulliver tells them about the glories of England. Jonathan Swift is also known for criticizing the Catholic Church. The last author that I want to mention from this period is Daniel Defoe, and very little is known about Defoe's childhood or adolescence, but as an adult, however, we know that he became a businessman and that he traveled widely in England and in Europe. Defoe tried many different occupations. He was a soldier, he was a political spy, he was a merchant, but above all, he was a writer. It is said that Daniel Defoe wrote more than any English author ever, And for many years he worked as a journalist, and there was a constant flow of articles, satires, stories, and pamphlets. All in all, he wrote 560 pieces. His pamphlets especially caused him serious trouble because since what he wrote often offended the establishment, and he was fined more than once, and he also had to spend some time in prison. His most famous piece is, of course, Robinson Crusoe, which was published in 1719 when Defoe was 60 years old. And Robinson Crusoe is regarded as the first novel in English. And it is, of course, a story of a castaway and his struggle for survival. And Robinson Crusoe was a celebration to the self-made man. And this story is famous because it's written in such detail and with such accuracy that the reader is led to believe that Defoe himself had spent a lot of time on a desert island.